Hi, I'm Aisha. Today's topic on LitVibes. Do you think AI will replace writers? What is the future of storytelling?
Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to LitVibes. I'm your host, Schuyler Esprit, and this is your front row seat to the trending and hot topics in the writing world. We welcome you this evening where stories spark conversations and writing meets the real world. Our conversation this evening is AI and the future of storytelling, resource or danger? From AI versus authorship to storytelling in the age of social media, we're unpacking it all with writers, dreamers, pioneers, and thinkers from Dominica and beyond. So let's sit tight and grab your phones, your pens, your iPads, whatever you're watching us on, and dive into the conversation with us. I will now invite the panelists this evening to introduce themselves, and then we will pick up the question and answer. Okay, we can go to Dr. Simone.
Be here. Thank you. Oh, okay, let's try this again. Hi, everyone. It is wonderful to be here. Thank you, Dr. Esprit, for welcoming the panel into the group. I am Dr. Simone Mathieu. I'm an associate professor of psychology, and I'm also a goal-setting strategic coach. I work with people in the areas of higher education, health and wellness, and mass communication, those who are looking to be more consistent with pursuing and achieving important goals. I'm also the creator, host, and producer of 2 radio shows, Untapped Potential here on TDN Radio, as well as Roots Connections on Q95 FM radio. So it is great to be here. I'm also the author of Push Past 10.
Great, thank you. We have Miss Bell. Okay. Let's go to Lasana Sekou.
Good evening. And you can hear me now.
Yes.
It's good to be here and certainly among the fellow and sister and brother panelists. I am a writer from St. Martin and the projects director of House of Nehesi Publishers. My name is Lasana Sekou, and I certainly look forward to not only sharing, but certainly learning much this evening. Thank you. And many thanks to the organizers for the invitation to speak as well.
All right, we have Catherine Dorsette.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I am an author residing on Montserrat, but originally from Dominica. I am really honored to be here. I look forward to learning a lot and contributing to the discussion.
Dr. Steinberg Henry.
Hello, thank you very much. I am Steinberg Henry, a writer, among other things, a life and dissertation coach. I am delighted to be here to share in this beautiful subject, touching communications.
We also have Ameka Cognet.
Hi, good evening, listeners. I am Ameka Cognet. I am one of Dominica's operating poets, and performance poetry is my main aspect that I look into. I've been writing for the past 18, well, performing for the past 18 or so years, and I look forward to this discussion as to being maybe the youngest on the panel and maybe how AI can push us forward in poetry and writing.
Were you once in the Dominica pageant?
Yes, I'm also a former pageant girl, so I'm a former Miss Dominica contestant, former Miss World Year contestant. I'm also a Calypsonian, so I love arts and I love everything to do with, I guess, literature and expressing yourself.
Wonderful. And we have Sam George, who is also our in-house tech. Thank you.
Thank you thank you, Dr. Esprit, for agreeing to host this panel. For some reason, I am so close to the screen, makes me mad. And of course, my name is Sam George. I am a web and software developer, so which means I write a lot of code, and um, I'm also a writer. I recently published my first solo novel called The Trust. I'm also a member of and the current chair of Piton Noir, which focuses on writing sci-fi and fantasy stories, but rooted in Dominican folklore. So it's a combination of all of that. And I recently found myself writing poems. So mostly in terms of for paper, so not for performance. I'm not a performer in any way, shape, or form. But and of course, I'm very happy to be on the panel tonight as we discuss AI and the future of writing.
Great. Thank you so much. I did not do a bio, but I have a keen interest in what's being discussed here in this panel for various reasons. I am, of course, a literary scholar. I am a lecturer in Caribbean literatures in English, specifically Caribbean literature, critical theory, and publishing at the University of the West Indies Mona campus. I am the coordinator of the Writing, Literature, and Publishing program. And so my students are writers, creative writers, people who want to work in the industry overall, in the business of publishing as well. I'm also a programmer, and I have a nonprofit called Create Caribbean Research Institute, which is the first digital humanities center in the Caribbean. And we operate in Dominica and at the University of the West Indies Mona campus. And for 11 years, we have been doing work at the intersection of culture and history and literature and arts and technology and community engagement. So I also have both the computer side and the publishing side in mind when I come. I was very excited to see this panel on the roster and was excited to sign up to host it. And I'm looking forward to a great conversation with you all. And so I want to just begin this conversation by situating us in a case that happened, that was ruled on, well, not ruled on, settled last week, actually, by Anthropic company, that the owner of the Claude AI, generative AI platform, that settled a 1.5 billion US dollar lawsuit with authors who filed their claim on the grounds that they used nefarious means to access copyrighted works in order to train the program. And this is an astounding win for writers everywhere, particularly on the basis, as I was reading up before this, on the fact that they not only use copyrighted material, but use pirated forms to access that material. And I was really interested in how Caribbean authors might have been victim to some of this, how Caribbean writers view their participation in it, or they might view whether or not they would have wanted to participate in something like this, and in what ways are we thinking about both our current work but the future of writing in general? Like, soon, will Claude need to get copyrighted works to train its chatbot? Will it be using AI generated works to do that? And so I have some questions here. I'm going to try to extend a few of the questions specifically to those of you who see yourselves as writers. I know we have some publishers in the room as well, and I will ask of some of you to speak, and then from the tech side as well. So let's think of the issues around um, the the ethics and copyright and cultural challenges. I don't know how you might feel about this now or in the future. I would love to hear your thoughts on, should writers have the right to opt out of having their work used to train AI models, as we begin with this very, very recent case that was ruled in the favor. Think of about 20 years ago when Google and China had the war out of over scanning books to make them available on Google Books. They Google won, right? And so the conditions have changed so drastically now that the authors have won this case. How do you feel about the ethical challenges that we're facing with AI right now? I will invite Sam to begin for us, and then we can take a few comments on this particular question before.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. If I may, just to add to what you began with about the Anthropic case, I will add that this case was two pieces. One piece was the books that Anthropic used. Some of them were books they legally purchased. The judge ruled that it was fine for them to use those as a way to train their AI, which goes back to the case you just mentioned with Google and scanning the books.
Yeah.
So, but I do agree with the second part of the case where the books that they use illegal means to train their AI, it's perfectly fine that they settle that case or they were ruled against. Because of course we want authors to always have control of their work. I want to have control of my work. I don't want somebody to just decide that they are going to take it and do whatever it is they want to make money, which I'm not going to get a hint of that. So, of course, I don't think that we can sit there and say, well, I don't think AI is some sort of nefarious entity that's alive and it's living and it's deciding what it's going to do. It's going to just, all of this comes down to the human heart. All of that comes down to us as people. What we do and if we do it ethically. I think that word is key when it comes to discussing how we use AI, what we use it for. I see it as a tool no greater than a hammer and a saw, a chisel, or whatever it is. I don't see it as anything greater than that. What you decide to do with those tools, that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, so if I can chime in as well, because I think this is an important conversation, and I'm happy we're talking about ethics. But I also think it's important to recognize that many people are still stuck in the stage of fear of AI. And I kind of just want to remind everyone of when the internet first came out. And there were similar concerns, people were going to steal your information, don't put any information on the internet. And now look at us, right? Look at how the benefits the internet has brought to us. So Sam is absolutely correct in that just like any other tool, just like the internet can be used to connect us from around the world here to many. I'm an online professor, so I mean, come on, that's a significant benefit for me in education. It's the same way the internet can be used for evil. You have scammers, you have all sorts of nefarious characters out there. So I think it is so important for us to touch on getting over that fear of AI, because I get the sense a lot of people are stuck in the fear, and that fear is going to hinder our opportunities to be able to benefit from all the great tools of AI. And then just to piggyback on your question, Dr. Esprit, one of the things that we saw come out recently was there was an agreement that was supposedly signed between all the major companies in terms of ethics of AI. And I'm just going to read out some of the companies that were involved in that. So we have the likes of Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI, for example, IBM. So the idea is that, the phrase do no harm usually applies to medicine. But in that case, in terms of upholding ethics, these companies have vowed to uphold the ethics in terms of AI. Now, Will they bend the rules? That's another question. But importantly, to recognize that there's some ethical rules that have been put in place, and to the point where there's a kill switch for AI, so that if it becomes, too well learned and too aggressive, that supposedly it will be able to shut down. So I just want us to make sure we are not getting stuck on the fear, and we're looking at the threats as well as the opportunities.
Thank you. I want to ask another question. We have so many questions and so many panelists, and I will get, you can also give feedback on this at a later point when the question comes your way. Thanks for those opinions. As somebody who teaches writing and loves, I write my own code, I tell them all the time, AI is math. There's nothing we can do without you're dealing with, you cannot be afraid of math. I know we have a cultural sort of general fear of math, but this is what you're up against. You're really not up against any sensory kind of experience. Nobody can replace the feeling you have in your body or in your mind when you're reading poetry or you're writing it, right? That cannot be replaced by math, right? It can be duplicated in a simulation of it, but it's never the real thing. And so we have to get confidence, again, move past the fear and get the confidence from that. And I will move to another question that's related to that. I know we have a self-publishing panel this week. Let's think about the opportunities, like Dr. Mathieu was saying. What opportunities come? And I will just direct this question first to Lasana Sekou, as a publisher, a pretty well established publisher in the region, right? Let's think about the future marketplace that we're creating for stories and how this might be an opportunity for us to have innovation and inclusion in storytelling. Do you see this? And I'm going to open it to the writers after. Do you see this as a opportunity for someone to build their craft, to learn skills, to become a storyteller and get access to publishing? We know publishing as an industry is very gated, historically, very hard to get into, especially when it comes to the quote unquote literary publishing world, right? What opportunities do you see there for more inclusion and to give people access to skills and maybe to markets for publishing by using AI as a craft support or as a publisher support? Lasana, I'll throw it first to you, and then possibly Catherine and Steinberg, and then can come in.
Indeed, it continues to open up the, for lack of a better word, the democratization of publishing by having it as a support, by having it as a kind of a tech support. It opens it up to writers to self-publish their work, but it also opens it up to publishers to widen, to indie presses to be able to be a bit more competitive, to be more creative, to be able to take the lead in certain areas that maybe certain financial decision of major publishers may prevent them from going into immediately or right away. So AI is important. It is nothing to fear. Indeed, it is what we do as human beings. We create these texts, we create these learning tools, we create these aspects of technology that we have been doing for thousands of years. When the Africans of ancient Egypt made the prosthetic toe, well, that was including tech in the human being. The post-medieval Europe developments on the spectacles. When we put on those glasses, we are attaching some kind of technology to ourselves. So we need not fear it, but definitely to work with it. If I may rush back to in using it as publishers and as writers, as young writers, and keeping the creative edge involved, because the better we are able to prompt it, the better we are able to use the technical directions to better our own craft. Will show up. It will show up, and over time, that we will know who's still a good writer, what is still a great story. And here's where storytelling is eternal in that sense. If there is going to be a future danger and or how to use the resources of AI, the storytelling will tell that story. In fact, But if I may go back quickly because I want to bring in something of control, go back quickly to the ethical issues. The ethical issues are great to engage and entertain, and certainly to the degree that we will see it pop up in government legislation and even in corporate corporate rules and regulatory practices. And so, but I still feel we should always be, as publics, as individuals, certainly as writers, definitely as storytellers, we should always be very mindful of the level of control that governments acquire when they are setting this thing, when they are managing how this thing is going to work, how we're going to engage it. And we should always, government or corporate, we should always, as citizens, as writers, certainly, we're talking about writers here, definitely as publishers, certainly the indie presses, we should always have to continue like these type of discussions, to have the impacts, to follow the legal precedents that are being set, to have the impact on those plans and policies and practices that government and corporate will engage relative to both the ethical and the very practical regulatory features that are coming. It's already $1 billion industry. And allow me to read something very quickly that came out of the of ChatGPT. I hope later on I can get to tell you of a little experiment we did a few years ago about it. And so here was the opener, the OpenAI footnote to its answers, to its prompting. This question says, ChatGPT sometimes writes plausible sounding but incorrect and nonsensical answers.
Very funny.
Yes, indeed.
I think it's so funny, yes, because he does that.
Indeed. And who's better to spin that than storytellers? And,
right.
and that sort of thing.
Yes. Thanks so much. I will use this to ask Catherine and Ameka a question about writing. I actually did this exercise in my class last semester where I asked, me and my students sat together and wrote a Black love romance on AI, and we gave it a prompt and asked it to write a story, and I asked the students to review this story from AI, and they're like, oh, this sounds like we wrote it on Wattpad when we were 14. This is they were horrified that they're like, this is it. This is the best thing AI can do, because we gave it a solid prompt. We said, we want a Black love romance set in the Caribbean, and we wanted to have, and it was very cliche. It was very much picking out the best of every, very, very bad Harlequin romance novel you ever read and just put the Caribbean in there, right? It was just not speaking to us as people. I thought but it really helped with convincing them that it does not replace that kind of work that you do as writers. And so I would like to ask Catherine, and then Ameka, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because you did say you're the youngest in the room. So I'm going to prompt that your ear to the ground in the fan fiction spaces and all of the other spaces people write. Do you see it as a creative partner? Let's start with Catherine. How have you been able to use AI as a creative partner? In what ways do you think you might find it useful, or have you already engaged with it? And what do you think are some of the possibilities for how you might engage with it as you learn more about it?
When I first heard about AI, and the expression was, nobody can do it like AI, it was like, wow, what's going to happen to us writers? And I thought about it, and I said, I wonder what it sounds like when they write something. So like you did with your class, I gave it a prompt, and I asked for just a paragraph, or like a scene. And there were no punctuations. It's like somebody in grade 4 was trying to write something. Some of the words were of a higher level, maybe grade 6, but it was really not, it didn't have that human tone. And it was very repetitive. Whatever was said in the first sentence, 2 sentences below, they would use the same words. So I said, okay, there isn't anything to fear about AI. And I think AI can, as writers, we do not have to use AI to write, because that is what we do, we write. But for example, if maybe you're not inspired to write anything and you can't think of something to write on, AI can help because they generate ideas. So that is how they help as well. And I found it helpful with some of my work with the government for language support, because sometimes I have some documents that are in another language that I want to look at. And but what I've what I've also found is AI has its own interpretation of different languages, because it translated a document for me in from Spanish to English. And when I spoke with an actual person from Santo Domingo, and they were helping me with it, they said it wasn't translated correctly. So there is that. We cannot take everything AI spews out as gospel. We have to do our own research, be ourselves. Let us continue to do our hard work and put our work out there, because AI just can't replace us, at least not in the sense that we used to think. They are not human. They cannot bring out that sense of loneliness or hunger or love or rage that we can write and put on paper. At least not yet.
Thank you. I don't know when that will be, but I doubt it. Amika, I want to hear your thoughts on.
So there's
Yeah,
that.
I want to hear your thoughts on this. Creative partner or not? Like, what do you think? How are young people interacting with AI? I know I'm an educator of young adults. I can tell you how they're doing it at school. But I would like to hear how they think of it in terms of, we have a lot of young writers that I've interacted with in Dominica and in the region. And some of them are really trying to learn their craft, and they're using, I want to use this opportunity to say that AI is not just ChatGPT. There are all kinds of other AI tools that have language and so on. How do you find you and your peers, people you know in the arts community using AI, and what are the benefits or opportunities you see? Also, what are you maybe afraid of?
I guess in the beginning, I was afraid, I guess, just like most persons, in terms of using AI, before we know artificial intelligence, you think it's an alienated, kind of, technology. But then, as stated before by, I think, by Mr. George, that I mean, it's the same way when Google came, etc. And persons were afraid when we had stuff like Hi-Fi and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And I'm fortunate enough to grow up in the era where technology evolved. And so I'm a 90s kid, and I have seen technology from not having the basic technology to what it is now, where we're all complex with Google. I am older than Google, and I'm grateful I can say that. Most of us here are older than Google. And so I've seen it from the beginning to like now, where it has evolved into all these different AI chat boxes, etc. So for me, as a younger writer, though I am strictly mostly with pen and paper, I have found it very useful now to use AI, not just for, I guess, how the other panelists have stated that they use it as a tool. It can be used as a dictionary. AI, especially, they do give the disclaimer at the bottom that they may make mistakes, and that is because you cannot replace human intellect with AI. So
I think we may have lost Amika for a second.
we as humans, we have to prompt AI, and it's all based on how you prompt it. In recent, I have also used it for some writing. Every now and then we get writer's block, and so I sometimes use it in the past for ideas, or maybe some.
Okay, I don't know if it's just me, but we lost Amika for a second.
Yeah, she's having some internet issues.
She's having some internet issues. Don't worry, we'll pick her up when she comes back. Amika, we lost you, but we'll have a question later. Dr. Stein, you are with us, and I would love to tap into your long storied history in writing. We had lost you, Amika. Are you back? We were moving on because we lost you.
I think I'm back. Sorry.
We'll pick up it was a while. So we'll pick up this question later, but I want to talk to Dr. Steinberg. Henry, one of our long career journalists, writers in Dominica and in the region, well respected And I want to ask you your thoughts on this, because you now, with a vision impairment, you're interacting with books and reading in all different kinds of forms, and it's really interesting. I encountered I was looking in my Audible account, because I too, a professional reader, read in all formats. And I was on Audible last week, and I saw a publication that was written by AI and had a virtual voice. And I had posted it on my Instagram story saying, this is where we are now. That the story was sort of co-written by this man who had written, let's say, he said something like 300 texts with AI in a matter. And the book was actually a history of Jamaica. And it was written by a man from Wisconsin or somewhere in the Midwest with AI. And I have so many questions about it, and I thought I would pose some of them to you. One is the question of, what will eventually happen when AI starts doing all the writing? Are you worried that all of these stories will sound the same? And also the ethics, like colonial and post-colonial ethics of having a white man in Wisconsin or somewhere in the Midwest of the United States using AI to write a history of Jamaica or a history of people. What happens to the writers in our part of the world who also might benefit from using AIs to have the stories, but also have the actual lived experience and the historical background? How do you see the evolution? What are your thoughts on this process?
Well, I am imagining AI writing for me. Her lips kiss me like the juice of a Julie mango. And I am imagining, I like it. I will start by saying a bit about a few things. I'm a communication student for life. It has been my passion. And in 1989, I did a course as an undergraduate called Artificial Intelligence. And there were 3 of us in the class at the University of Windsor. And the professor met me once outside the Windsor Library, and he said, Steinberg, I noticed that you're very much involved in the course. How are you enjoying it? I say, it's fascinating, except that the machines and the things that I'm looking at, they have no blood. He laughed and he laughed. He said, it's so funny. But all along, when I was getting ready for this event, I thought of Caribbean people, Caribbean consciousness, our long history, our fascinating imagination. And I thought we are all consumed in this AI thing. And I also observed that when people spoke about AI, they spoke about it. So, it is, I asked it, I told it gave me a response. And then I realized, for those of us who know French or even English, you can conjugate the verb to be. And the verb to be, je suis, tu es, il est, elle est, nous sommes, vous êtes. Somewhere in all of this, there's an it is. I am, he is, she is, it is, we are, they are. It is only one part of this thing. And it is an it. So the question became, wow, this is a thing, and it is a great tool. Tony Nader of the Maharishi International School of Meditation described it as another species. That had, another introduction. I'll tell you one thing that I just thought interesting from the Canadian media guru, Marshall McLuhan. He wrote the book, The Medium is the Message. And he spoke about extensions. And he said, the book is an extension of the eyes. The motor vehicle wheel is an extension of the feet. And the computer is an extension of the central nervous system. We now have 100 billion neurons. ChatGPT, AI, artificial intelligence reaches to the far depths of all bodies of knowledge that exist. I am not going to run away from it because it's going to find me anyway. So I encourage everybody to go into it. What is amazing, like I listened to Colton T today saying, they're not going to phase me. Nothing's going to phase me. There's nothing to be afraid of. When I traveled Liat, I wouldn't be long, in 1989, going home on holiday from university, I had an old computer called an Amstrad. I had to put in a floppy disk to get the operating system. And when I typed to save, I had to remove it and place in another one. But the flight attendant over me was looking over my shoulder. And each time I looked at her, she would move away. There was a gentleman next to me, and he was kind of like, oh, what is this? I had a little 5-inch screen that was green. And what is this? And the general view was that the computer was going to suck us in when we got to it. I spoke with my friend, Dr. Christiana Abraham at Concordia. She told me, Stein, you have to read the history of the telephone. People thought there was something was going to go into their ears, something was going to eat them out. And now, well, obviously, the likes that have emerged have caused a number of our young persons between 13 and 17 to be severely depressed. But other than this, AI is here with us. Let us enter into it like the Martin Carter, the guy in his poet, say, fight against the raging of the night. It is our property. Let us go into it and use it to the best of our abilities.
Thanks for that. That was really
if I could chime in, chime in, very well said, Dr. Steinberg. If I can chime in, Dr. Esprit. Speaking about using AI as a partner, and again, going back to educating ourselves, I'm actually taking an AI course as we speak, because I think it is important to educate ourselves in terms of the opportunity it presents. And some of the findings I found so far is, for example, in terms of using it as a partner, using it to design the cover of your book, right? Using it to design the cover of your book. As Catherine mentioned, very important, the translation feature, which I think will get better. And again, it depends on the type of AI system that you're using, and also the importance of getting the credit. So I was just watching this program last night, and what they did is every image that popped up that was created by AI, there was a watermark that said AI, so you knew that it was AI generated. So I think in the future, in terms of ethics, that would be where the standards would lie. For example, those of us who are self-publishers on Amazon, KDP, you know that when you go into your account, it is now asking you if your written information was generated by AI or if you published the book yourself. So there are lots of ways, if we as human choose to be ethical, and also keep in mind there's an option to opt out of AI. So for example, if you're using ChatGPT, but you do not want it to track what you're researching, you don't want it to add to the information that ChatGPT is using to generate more knowledge, you can opt out of that and search in incognito. So just, again, keeping the idea of using this as a partner in terms of, what we're trying to accomplish as authors and in other areas of our life.
Just 60 seconds on that. Just one quick thought, quickly before you go. All technologies throughout all human history have always raised discourses, controversies, conversations, ethical, spiritual, and philosophical issues. They've always done it.
If I may throw in a quick note, Dr. Esprit, not only relative to the ethics as we started, and then we're talking more about the use of AI, but also, I think there's an issue or an element, maybe we've touched on it, of a parallel industry or even a competitive industry of AI detectors or AI detection. So in its billion-dollar industry of throes and its triumphs, AI is indeed improving, rapidly improving. but so is the apps and the programs and the codes to detect when content is from a machine learning model, whether it's stories, whether it's homework, whether it's essays in peer-reviewed journals, which is going through a whole very controversial issues right now relative to that. Whether it's poets submitting a poem to literary magazines, or whether it's a kaiso or bouillon or merengue lyric in a music festival. So I believe that the detection aspect of it, that AI detectors will become an industry as well, parallel or competitive. And I think that is an important feature to not lose sight of. Maybe certainly as coming out from the publishing space, but also as a writer to know that and to be aware of that, as magazine editors, as proofreaders and so on, to know that there are those programs of detection which will be improving, which are improving as well, and rapidly so too. I think that's important to know.
Yeah,
Dr. Esprit, before you jump ahead, two things. One, I know we said we have an hour. However, if we need to extend that time, that's okay. We can do that. Okay. So anyone who can stay on beyond the hour, please feel free. And of course, if you have to go, that's okay. All right. Also, I want to add a little bit to this discussion that, you know, as everyone has said, those are tools. We can't fear them. But I think what is missing in the discussion, and there are already tools that we can use to detect AI, but that is also using AI to detect AI. So it's all convoluted at this point. And all governments are having discussions as to how to deal with the AI revolution in terms of copyrighted material. Well, do you say that do you give the AI the copyright, or do you give it to the human being who gave it the prompt? I say it's the human being who gave it the prompt because it must come from a human head first. If you give an AI a foolish prompt, it's going to give you a foolish answer. If you give it a well thought of prompt, it's going to give you a well thought of answer as much as it can based on the knowledge it has. So quite frankly, well, let me say this. My youngest son is 20 years old. He'll be 21 this year. He's in college and he wants absolutely nothing to do with AI. Nothing. He doesn't want to hear anything done by AI. He doesn't use AI to research. He just doesn't want anything to do with it. That's completely, and quite a few other young people around his age I talk to have the same attitude. So I'm not afraid for the future generation in terms of how they are thinking and what they want to do.
Okay,
but Dr. Judge, you cannot really.
I'll let you come back to it. You
cannot really avoid that. Because I mean, though he would like to avoid it, Google and all of these are AI generated. They're more prompted to research,
but right?
Hold on. Already.
But
that's what
there are different apps. Google uses AI. Samsung uses Gemini. WhatsApp uses AI. Everything right now is using AI, and so there's going to be a time when it's going to be inevitable. Like right now, there are persons who before all they wanted was a phone just to message, and right now all phones are coming with WhatsApp capability and online capability, which you cannot avoid. And so I think there will be a point in time when it's inevitable. It's going to be very hard to avoid it.
I
think so.
What I think is that it's a little bit to clarify something that we've all been talking about and around, and I will do this based on Sam's comment because it is an important distinction. Artificial intelligence includes a whole suite of things that we've already been using, right? That is everything from Grammarly to Google predictive text, and what we have predictive texting on your phone. All of these things are coming from code that allows you to use what we understand to be to be AI. What we are talking about in this context, for the most part, are large language models, LLMs, which we talk about in in computing that make it possible to generate AI. So it's looking at big data, big banks of data, like all of the books that are published, putting them into a thing and allowing them to be used as sort of like a bank, right? Just you have question banks for exams and you have test banks and answers. This language is going into a big bank, and every time, and I tell my students all the time, you're worried about AI or whatever, but every time you log onto Instagram, you're working for Meta for free because your data belongs to them. Every time we log into any app, we are working for these companies for free. That is essentially what we're doing. We're employed by Meta to go on Instagram and share a story because our data becomes their property, and we are using the app in a way that provides them with data they need to make money, right? But what I think I want to make that distinction here and talk about large language models, because large language models are the place where authors' works are going to be able to create a generative AI. So it is possible. I am still fighting the WhatsApp revolution. I do not want to be on that app. My job is telling me 10,000 WhatsApp groups. My students keep asking me to join 500 WhatsApp groups, and I am not that old. I am probably the second youngest in this group, maybe. And I do not want to be on this app. I think we should still communicate on my work email only every time. And I am communication around work has changed so much, right? So think about me saying die hard. Do not expect me to, if it's on WhatsApp, if I see it, I see it. If I don't, I don't. And I'm going to try to avoid seeing it as much as possible. I'm still fighting that. But I also teach a class called The World of Publishing that begins in the 1400s with Gutenberg. And I understand, like Steinberg is saying, that every technology has presented us with a crisis of conscience and a crisis of communication. And I think that big data is something that we can wield. I work in a field of digital humanities called minimal computing, where we store all of that big data. So when they go and crash all of the things with their AI, when they're all done taking up all the water and all of the electricity to power their data centers and everything crashes, somewhere on my little floppy disk and computer, I have all of the archived history of the Caribbean in little text files, in little plain text that we can reproduce on our own. They're always there, right? So we have to save distance.
Yeah, and if I might add, we have a wonderful conversation going on in the chats, in the comment section. So let's make sure we're including the audience in the discussion.
I was just going to ask you, Simone, to look
Can I
at
ask Dr. Esprit a question as an educator and a coder? Because this is one I think I have it in a box in the back of my head somewhere too. As a educator, as a coder. So when we are dealing with inputting data, when we're dealing with prompting, or we just consumers of this information that we're going to put in homework or in an essay or in a song or in a poem, how do you discuss with your students, Dr. Esprit, and Dr. Mathieu possibly also, how do you discuss with your students the information they receive, and even sometimes the information they're inputting are in line with this whole, someone mentioned the term colonial or neo-colonial before, but how do they deal with those words and those terms and those references that are what Toni Morrison called oppressive language, especially as it relates to our people, certainly in the Caribbean. How do you touch base with your students on that? I use the word touch base for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I got so fed up of the AI. Let me tell you how I got to the AI assignment. Is that one semester I had so many bad essays I asked the students at the senior class they had to put a research proposal on their own topic. These were publishing students and it was their capstone course. So they had to pick a topic on publishing that they were interested in and wanted to write a research paper on for the semester. And the proposal came back only AI. Ooh. And so I was so disgusted with everything. I said, so y'all don't have an idea for yourself? Like, you don't trust yourself to have an idea? Right. And so I had a community conversation. That's one place I started. I talked to my students about their own. I think one of the things we need to tackle in going back to what Dr. Matthew said, as for us as educators, but in general around writers and people interacting with these tools, is around not just the fear and intimidation of AI, but also this idea that AI is more powerful than us. And so I wanted to teach my students in that moment about trusting their own voice. Like, what, every time you come to class, if I had to transcribe our conversations and our class discussions, you would have so many rich opinions on so many things. So why is it that when you go home to a blank page, you don't trust yourself? Why is it that you feel this thing can be more smarter than you? You have great ideas when you're here with me. Trust that, build confidence in that. But I also use I did the Steinberg thing, and I went to the other forms of communication, and I taught a class called Publishing at the End of the World last semester. This is the class I used the AI prompt. And so we did other forms of creative production, including podcasts. We did a zine. We went back to old school making zines like they used to do in the 60s and 70s with the anti-colonial. We had all kinds of different exercises in that class. And then we also did an AI assignment, and we prompted AI, like we might ask you to do in a little while, right? We prompted AI to ask a question about, do you think AI will replace the human need for connection that literature provides? That was the assignment prompt that I gave them in their last assignment. And I'll be honest with you, from the zine to the podcast to the final project, when I told them to do an essay that included, was the least creative they did, because I went back to the essay format. So I thought that the genre mattered.
Okay.
The zine, they got to really be tactile, and then the podcast. But the essay, once I said essay, it was like something they get afraid.
Right. And not to stray too much from the topic, but that is absolutely correct, that AI is a challenge, especially in higher education, because I too teach the capstone course at my university for their degrees, and most of the students, they've been at this for 2-3 years and they're burnt out. So yes, they're turning to AI, and unfortunately at this time, while we have an originality checker for plagiarism, there is no checker for AI. So we're now trying to navigate, and I'm so happy that Mr. Sekou mentioned the detection of AI, because that is certainly a tool we will need to use in education. Because I was watching a CNN program recently, and they were saying we're going to have to go back to the days where we defended our education orally, because written papers now are going to be so compromised because of AI. We may have to get to the point where people are pretty much defending, like, we defend our dissertations, that at the stage of education, we may have to resort to oral presentations.
Talking about dissertations, I just had a conversation with a Chinese friend of mine, because I provided coaching and guidance for students who were writing dissertations and whose first language is not English. So you can well imagine. And she's telling me that she uses AI sometimes to get a better word. And sometimes she writes a sentence or a paragraph and she finds it's too long, because obviously when they work from Chinese into English, the language can become a sort of superfluous, a sort of heavy, and Chinese tend to write very long sentences. I don't know if it's the whole Marxist touch, but she said sometimes she needs to shorten her paragraphs, and she asks AI, please shorten this, and AI shortens it. And sometimes she's not pleased with what it says because it sort of conflates what she wanted to say. So the students I'm finding whose first language is not English, they are using it to help them construct better English sentences, but they are also struggling with its results.
Absolutely. And I want to bring up a point that I want to open up the questions to the people, our viewing audience, as well as to our panelists. One of the things that I didn't get in the prompt they sent me to prepare for this, but it's really interesting to me in education and literature, and I think Catherine touched on it with her issue of translation. Translation is a very specialized field when it comes to translating literature, fiction into another language, again, because you have that nuance, you have all of these things. And one thing about the Caribbean space that I think we need to rely on is our multiplicity of languages and our the multiplicity of vernacular languages. My late colleague who passed away, she was studying AI and other languages and how vernacular languages in like patois and creoles like we have in the region are infused in writing, and how we can make technologies respond to that. She was thinking specifically about technologies that help people to learn um, linguistics and things like that. But I'm thinking about how AI cannot necessarily, or not yet, what is the advantage in our Caribbean context of having these vernacular languages as critical parts of our writing? And do we see a world in which, or will you be a more fearful or more open to AI, a generative AI in which it can do Jamaican patois or Dominica Creole or any of those things? Because we're not there yet, but we might be.
I
Let
am
me chime in
using.
very quickly
Okay.
because
I think Dr. Matthew has to go soon. So
yeah, let me chime in very quickly because
opportunity.
yes, thank you. Let me chime in very quickly because I recall, Sam was looking to do a calypso using AI. And unfortunately, it was only able to go back, and Sam can correct me if I'm wrong, it was only able to go back to the very origins of what calypso sounded. So I think in that regard, we have an advantage with our dialects in the Caribbean and our colloquial languages, because unfortunately, I don't think, our patois and our creoles just yet on the radar. But again, this is an emerging technology. So as it masters the English language, then I'm assuming it will go on and master the other languages. But for now, if you are an author who's choosing to write in colloquial language, then you certainly are at a disadvantage. But going back to the example Dr. Steinberg mentioned, we too in the Caribbean use very lengthy sentences, because I remember when I transitioned to come to university up here in the US, I had a lot of issues with English professors who would send me back my paper and say your sentences are too complex. So I think it is also an advantage for us when we have Caribbean students coming from the region, coming up here to the US to do their university or any form of education, that it can guide with, shortening sentences. My concern is that, you don't want the student to upload the entire paper and then AI rewrite the paper. So that would be the concern. But guys, I do have to leave. I have another engagement. But I just want to say, when I think of all that AI is right now, what comes to mind, honestly, is that in the future and even right now, success is going to belong to those who can master AI on so many different levels, because you take a quick search into YouTube and you see the number of people who are making a whole lot of money using ChatGPT and other AI applications. And so I do not want for us to miss those opportunities because we are stuck in fear. So when we keep in mind that this is going to lead to success in so many different areas, your health, your finances, having clarity on your goals, it is a recommendation for us to embrace this as an opportunity, embrace this as a tool, and figure out how can it work to our benefit. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Dr. Esprit, for hosting this program. Thank you, Sam, for the invitation. Catherine, Dr. Steinberg, Mr. Sekou, nice being here. And I will continue listening, but I have to exit at this point. So have a great evening, everyone. And don't forget to get comments on Facebook and YouTube.
Yes.
Right. No problem.
You can tell I host programs on StreamYard, right, Sam?
Definitely.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. If I may just jump in here to pick up on what Dr. Simone Mathieu was saying. So one of the things my company does is we actually, since AI has the ability to produce songs, that's some of the things we've done. We've helped people produce songs. I've written a bunch of songs that I didn't know what to do with. AI gave me the ability to produce them and make them into a recording. That's one thing. And So we did try to do like a modern type calypso. It didn't work. It went back all the way back to Trinidad type origin type slow ballad type calypso. That is not to say in the next week it won't be able to do a song like sing like say Daddy Chess or Hunter or any one of those people from Dominica, because it is growing really, really fast. It's not, the AI brain is not like the human brain where it can take us a long time to absorb something and we have to study or we have to memorize, and depending on who you are. It's a computer. So it's just going to absorb the information. As soon as it's fed the information, it's going to learn it and be able to spit it back out to us. That is in no way to tell anyone to be afraid. I just think that if you compare two books, one written by AI and one written by a human being, I am pretty sure you'll be able to tell the difference. Who wrote what? One will have soul and feeling and the human connection, and one will just be ones and zeros, as you say, math. So, I just think a lot of the fears that surrounds the advent of AI, and again, I always go back to the fact that AI and machine learning is nothing new. Been around since the 1950s. It's just that it's at the hands of almost anyone. It's at our fingertips now, much like when the computer came to become a desktop. Now it is your phone. It's no longer a phone, it's a computer. So,
Yes, and we all have our. I know, Dr. Stein. I think you also had some thoughts on that, but I also know we have our things that we keep and we want to move into technology into the future with, and some of the things, like I said, I don't want to move with WhatsApp. I would rather leave it behind. But there are other things I embrace. I teach technology. I teach information, and one of the things that I have found AI very useful for in my work, in digital humanities specifically, is using AI and AI tools to help us recreate the past and recreate stories about the past in our effort to do cultural and preservation, historical preservation, and to teach students about our Caribbean history and some of the texts. So using AI to sort of generate time-specific images on the 17th century, 18th century, using it, giving them prompts from historical records to say, let us have a scene from this novel and let's visualize what it might have looked like using the language of the author so that the students can really understand the setting and so on. That has been a very great teaching tool for me, but also a way the students themselves use that. A lot of the AI artwork creatively to create scenes to accompany their writing, actually. If they are still writing, they're still doing, but because they're publishing it electronically, they find themselves using the AI images as a way to complement the work that they're doing for these digital publications, which has had some great benefits, right? So although I am still very much aligned with, my social justice mission that technology is not going to be ruling everything, print has been around since the 1400s in its current format, since 1450 and the Gutenberg Bible, right? And it's still here. And I keep telling people this print is still here, and that gives me hope for anything that can come. That it's not going to take over as a print girly myself, right? Print is still here. Right? It's not going anywhere right now. Every time we have a new technology, we think it's going to disappear. And some parts of it do, right? Disappear, like magazines have changed and so on. But I want us to also, I'm going to put this prompt out, and I think because I also have a time limit, I also want us to try asking AI some of these questions. We had kind of prepared some questions for AI, and we wanted to hear what the chatbots might say. Do you have I think I want to play one of them so people can hear the answer. Some of the questions that I raised earlier, I want to ask now. Okay. Let's ask AI, will AI's reliance on patterns and data eventually make our stories feel the same? And see what the prompt gave us. Sam, you want to help me with some audio? Or should I?
Oh, which question is that? Because I think I only have one of them. I have response 1.
Oh, you have. I have the others. Okay. Let's do the first one. Could AI finally allow anyone with a story idea, regardless of skill or background, to become a published storyteller?
Okay. Let's
Yes.
see. AI's response is
Yes.
Has to be yes.
Of course, you're gonna say
Not
yes.
ready.
Alone. This lowers the barrier to entry,
okay. I'm
potentially
gonna start it
amplifying
over because I
voices from
think
marginalized
It's taken a long time for AI to answer that one.
or underrepresented communities. But it also means the literary world may need new ways to ensure quality and originality when anyone can publish. Absolutely. I can help with structure, language, world building, or even generating first drafts for people who might not have the writing skills or time to execute their vision alone. This lowers the barrier to entry, potentially amplifying voices from marginalized or underrepresented communities. But it also means the literary world may need new ways to ensure quality and originality when anyone can publish. Absolutely.
Okay, so the answer was sure, I can help, but we still need checks and balances. AI is asking for checks and balances?
Of course.
Yep.
And I found it very interesting for Lasana and Stein. I was finding it with the last part about we need to ensure quality and originality. And I'm saying, is AI, I mean, Shakespeare, there's 7 story formats in the world, I think, right? Like, idea is completely original. Its rendering is, right? But AI asking for originality when it's actually building is really a plug and play story builder. It's really funny to me.
Yeah, it is. It is. A gentleman called me and said, we have 9 reviews of your book, As She Returns Now, that I published in 2021. So I said, you have reviews of my book? Who did those reviews? He said, the one is a doctor something from Malaysia, a doctor something from Australia, a doctor something from New York. And I said, well, of course. Hi, Ego. Would you like to read these? So my own self, I told him to send them to me. And I read the entire 9 pages. Now I say read, but I listened to them. That is a whole other intelligence and AI facility that I've used, even to write an entire PhD, listening. So I listened to the 9 pages, and then I called him, and I said, what did you use to do that? He said, oh, people wrote that up for you. I got this from them. I say, I notice that the text is very stiff. It's kind of mechanical. And not only that, I noticed that the word genetics appears the same place in the second paragraph on each of the 9 reviews. The telephone went off.
Oh, goodness. Dr. Stein, didn't you want to have a conversation about that?
No, I'm gonna go with Dr. Steinberg. I'm not even gonna respond to that one. I'm gonna agree with that. Because when we spoke about detectors, that would be for us as editors one of the quickest ways to spot it. To sense get an idea it's happening is the repetition that happens in paragraphs. Sometimes it skip a paragraph, but indeed, certain keywords, certain lines, sometimes an entire line is repeated.
Well, it's also the M dashes for me. It's the M dashes.
You love an M dash, and no one uses M.
No human being writes with M dashes.
I don't know. I used to use them.
I used to use M dashes, but
now I'm mindful of using it. But I used to use it. I like them.
I mean,
especially
you
poetry.
Want to use them in order to use them. A human being. I mean, just use a comma and be done. That's my point.
In poetry, we use M dash often.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
but
yeah,
you know,
I see the point.
that's one of the tests I have actually given the AI.
Mm.
I told it, write me a paragraph on a certain topic and do not use M dashes. And I said, do you understand? That was ChatGPT. It responded, yes, I understand. No M dashes. I said, okay, give me a response. What do you think happened?
You had them dashes.
M dashes all over the thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do all the time, I use it because I write Python, a programming language called Python, and
Yeah.
sometimes I will hit a difficulty because I am mostly self-taught and I am not a career programmer. And so sometimes I will hit a wall, I'm trying to do something, and I will say, here is some code. Can you help me find the error? Or it will generate a code for me. I'm trying to solve this part of a problem. Can you give me some code to solve that? I will take the code and I will use it and I will realize there's an error here, right? I will run it in my program and realize an error. I will give it back the code that it just gave me and say, hey, can you fix this? And it will fall back for me, hey, this code has like 7 errors. Let me fix it for you. And I was like,
Yeah.
you are the one who just gave me the code with the 7 errors. What is not adding up? So even in doing that, that is always how I catch it. It's always something to do with code. I will give it some code. It will give me something back. And then after it doesn't work, it will tell me, well, this doesn't actually work. Let me give you something else. Right. So it is fallible in a lot of ways. I don't think we have that. But I also feel like just listening to the conversation that we are having, and the answer that we got on issues of quality and originality. One of the things that I want to punctuate as we sort of wrap up, because I don't see any questions in the chat except somebody asking if Dominicans who speak Patois, if Dominicans who can speak Patois are using the internet. I spoke Patois before I spoke English, so and I'm using the internet effectively. But there's maybe
We'll take some other comments before we go.
A minority of that. And it will take a while for it to get there with certain vernaculars. But I do want to say and emphasize for this conversation how important it is that we are having it in the Caribbean. We do not want to let go of the trends and where things are going in this industry, because the global industry around. I remember the other day that Random House and Simon and Schuster were trying to do a merger, and they killed the merger. And one of the things that the Simon and Schuster CEO said was, well, we can make AI help us. We're building up our market. If the courts would let us, right? The courts would let us merge and have a bigger market. That's fine. We will just turn to AI, and AI will help us with our production so that we can meet the market that we want to have, right? But I also, as an educator, as a writer, as an editor, I think about how, just in the last example with Steinberg and the word in the same place in the paragraph, the reason when I know 10 years ago, I have been teaching in university now for 20 years. I don't look like it, but I have. And the reason I always know when my students are doing something that they're not supposed to be doing is because I know them. I know their writing. I am an editor. I know their patterns of writing. So it doesn't take me a plagiarism checker or an AI checker to know. It takes me knowing them. It takes me knowing their writing and their work, right? So once you develop a relationship with words and with your authors that you love and with the students that you teach, you will start to think, well, it's when you're using that word. Like, this is not.
Doesn't sound like him.
It doesn't sound like it goes here, right? Or why are you using that word 5 times? These are the things. And so for me, that comes back to me as the human element in the instruction, me as the human element in the evaluation, and also me as a human element, as a mentor, as somebody who's teaching them writing and teaching them to learn their craft. And I think that for all of us here who are in positions of teaching or mentorship or writing, that is a really important part for us to kind of share that responsibility. But I also want to emphasize what Sam started with in the beginning. For all of us here, AI is not the problem. Humans are the problem. In any way, shape, or form. I am a big social justice advocate. I am an advocate for using technology, but I am very protective of the ways in which technology harms people from all parts of the world in all kinds of spaces. And that's why we need to know more about it so we can arm ourselves with the knowledge and skills to deal with it.
Just a quick question.
Go ahead.
Does the subject of ownership is big in communications. Those who own can determine. That's an old 19th century thought from Karl Marx. Those who own the means determine. Does anyone own the AI?
Well, it depends on which ones you are using. At least in the contract with you, if you're using a paid version or a paid tool, then they tell you it's yours. Whatever you generate, it's yours. And I think Dr. Simone alluded to it earlier, what you have to be careful of is the ones that will use your information or having their fine print that they can use your prompts or your generations to train their model. You have to be careful of that. There are others which you have the choice. You can opt in or opt out. You can tell them straight, don't use my material to train. So it just depends. But I think where the problem truly lies is in governments not yet having figured out how to deal with AI, how to copyright AI, or how to deal with AI within copyright laws to protect creators or protect those who use it. And again, I go back to whatever you tell an AI to do, it's from your head. AI cannot do anything unless I tell it to do something. So it must come from my thoughts, my mind, which is no different from me picking up a pad and paper and writing down my thoughts. I don't think it makes a difference.
That brings me to the question I have. When we first started and we spoke about the authors winning the suit against the AI company, one of the things I think it was Sam who said that the company won because they had already purchased the book.
Yep.
So they got that. So my question now is, let us use me for an example. I have a few books out. So if somebody buys my book, are they saying that because they have purchased the book, they can do what they want with it, make a movie, do anything with it? Or do they have to purchase the rights to do those things?
Yeah, no, that's not what they're saying. What the court said is that because they purchased the books legally, they can use them to train their model. I guess they are looking at it in the case of much like it's not being used directly to the public because the public doesn't see the back end of the LMN. That's what they mean. So it doesn't mean that they can take your book and go create another kind of work from it, like a movie or a story or whatever. They can't copy it. It doesn't allow them to violate copyright laws or plagiarize your work.
If AI is all-knowing, why does it have to be trained?
But that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. It's not all-knowing.
That was where I was going. It's like at the end of the day, it's human, right? So
yeah, it's human.
I want to go back to Steinberg's question, like who owns AI? We've been asking most of these technologies when they first develop are owned actually by the US military or somebody.
Yeah.
That's usually where I just taught this in class last week in my information studies class. Everything that we use now was probably created 40 years ago by the Department of Defense or somebody like that for military training, right? So
that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. It goes back again, I think I said that earlier, all of this goes back all the way to the 50s. They've been trying to do so many different things
since that time.
And a lot of the technology we have at our homes or wherever was developed for and by the US and Israeli militaries.
Yeah.
So it's and again, I could even say some of the social media platforms are intelligence gathering platforms. That's why I am always careful of things that are free. If it is free, it means you are the product.
You are working for them. I just said that you're working for free every day, and the data is collected. Even something as simple as don't Facebook me, and later I will show you how Microsoft Office now has a not just Copilot, but Microsoft Office now has a data point in their preferences where they tell you if you're actively typing and saving your documents in OneDrive or anything like that while you're creating them, there is an opt-out button that they don't use your active data that you're writing, your current storage information for training their AI. So
Yeah.
there is a link you need to go to in your preferences to turn that off if you don't want it to use.
I make sure to turn that off.
Yeah, so
Even
usually the opt-in is already turned on when you have
Yeah.
Microsoft Office on your computer. But if
Yeah.
you're just typing a document in Microsoft Word, that can be used to train their AI, right?
Yeah.
So you have to turn it off. So even the daily things that we use, yeah, it's not. And I already said, I don't block my camera anymore. I don't care. My password can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because at this point they have it, right? I am no longer. I have raised my white flag on some of the broader, bigger surveillance issues that were passed. But I also want us to understand that this is the things that we have to fight for are what Sam is talking about. Government policies that give ownership to the right people, because ownership means something completely different now in the age of streaming and ebooks and all of these things. Ownership is not the same, right? We have to think about the actors, the policymakers, the people who are owning the corporation, owning the means of production, and how we look at our relationship as not just citizens, but taxpayers and activists, and how we deal with the humans who are making those decisions, because the technology is not doing anything to us. These people in power are doing those things.
To the opting out issue, I wonder if we could make.
Can barely hear you, Mr. Sekou.
Yeah. How is it now? We good?
Yes,
Better.
Yeah.
I wonder if I can make a point relative to the opting out and the flip side of that. And it has to do with an article we did out of House of Nehesi, where we were asking AI to cite, to find or to tell us about 22 of our authors. And 22 is an exaggerated, we could have do 10 and it would have worked statistically. But we did 22. 19 out of those authors, they didn't have a clue. They gave wrong names. They gave them books that the people never heard of, and so on. But I'm wondering, so there may be an opt-in feature, Dr. Esprit, and maybe Brother George, relative to the work you're doing. So, for example, as a publisher, or even as a writer, you go online and you're looking for information on yourself or your authors and so on, or books, and something is materially, totally incorrect, including, for example, one of our authors, they said she died in 1996. This article came out in, I think, 2023, and she was, I spoke with her earlier that day, and they said she passed in 1996. So do we have a responsibility, if you will, again, for lack of a better word, to correct that information, to opt in that information, if I can term it like that, Dr. Esprit or Mr. George?
That's a good question, Mr. Sekou. I want the answer to that too, because I'll tell you why. My name is Sam George, and I have an issue. There is another Sam George. He's from the UK. I know he's from the UK. I know he's a European, but he has the same name. He has more books than me. So anytime someone looks up, like you write something about Stein, you will see his information comes up. Even on Goodreads, when I created my Goodreads account, I had to write to them and tell them this is the wrong person. And they went and fixed it. So that is a problem where it just picks up, I guess, the most popular one or the one that it knows or where. So that can
Sam,
be an
let me
issue.
give you one like that. My name is Steinberg Henry. Now, Steinberg is a surname in the United States and Canada. No matter what I tell you, I ask for Julieta, it gives me Henry Steinberg. It's still giving me the name of the book, but it gives me Henry Steinberg. I ask for Ashritas, it still gives me the title of the book, Ashritas. I ask for Calypso Drift, it gives me, but it still gives me Henry Steinberg.
Yeah.
Now, that raises an important cultural question.
Yep.
You see, and maybe that is where the ethics and all of that begins, and the ownership factor. Is there a dominant nation that begins to determine how things are structured within that particular system? Are your algorithms beginning to be determined? So that kind of thing. So in a sense, and then we have to be empowered, like Dr. Esprit keeps saying. Do we now begin to use our vast Caribbean imagination to sort of effect changes, or I don't know if that's the correct thing, to begin to construct our own algorithmic processes?
I believe we should.
Yeah.
I believe we need it. As a matter of fact, some months ago, I wrote an article. It's on tdnradio.net. I actually put it in the private chat because I want you all to read that when you have a chance. Just copy the link. I basically had a conversation with AI and asked it a few questions, and then in talked about how the Caribbean can benefit. And so that goes to your question, Dr. Esprit. We need, as Caribbean people, and I always say we missed the .com bubble, especially Dominica. We missed it because it made individuals richer than the whole Caribbean. So I don't want us to miss this opportunity. And at the same time, it's important because you have to remember a lot of these things are not built for us. They're not built with the Caribbean in mind. They are built with North America and Europe and Asia in mind. Because the people who created or trained them, we may have a few Caribbean people working for these companies, but they really do not have the influence to effect change and make sure that we are included. So it's up to us to fight that battle and make sure that we are included, that when someone looks up our name and our books, it comes up with the correct information. So there can be 100 Steinberg Henrys or Henry Steinbergs or Sam George or whatever, but the right one always comes up. And it's basically, we have to make sure that we are known, but we cannot do that by sitting and cowering in the corner and being afraid. We just can't. We're just going to end up on the losing end.
I started to experiment, and that may be it's just been such a fascinating discussion. I think it always feels like we need to have another one.
Yeah.
I began experimenting with something, and I said, if there is a randomness or an order in chaos or chaos in order, because I studied closely something called the Mandelbrot, and I looked at something called fractals. So anybody who has looked at the Mandelbrot, Mandelbrot, and fractals, you'll see. And I began to revisit this. And what I did, I used Kalinago words, and I drop in a Kalinago word inside my text, got the English meaning, and I just began to put random paragraphs into just random thoughts, no order, like I'm not putting in anything that say this flows from that and this flows from that. And then I said, how do they do it in this AI or ChatGPT thing? And I'm thinking, could I put anything inside that text randomly from anywhere, fill up 30 pages of material that has nothing to do with one another, and turn around and begin to connect them? It's a very intriguing thing because, in a sense, I think we have artificial intelligence at work in our lives much broader. We have it in insurance, in health, in agriculture, in trade, in banking, you name it. But what about what is inside of us? Is there an intelligence in us that almost parallels? I'm not going to ask my brain to tell me 6,965,265,875 multiplied by 22,000. I'm not going to ask my brain to do that. But are there things that I can now begin to randomly structure and let them find their space? They don't have to be known. They don't have to be recognized immediately, but we're going to. So there is a lot of, finally, to me, I have a beautiful definition that we had of communications. And it said, communication is the exchange of meanings between what? Intelligences. So the computer is an intelligence. Even, we are, plants are intelligences. They communicate with the sun. Fishes are intelligences. We are surrounded completely by intelligences. But you see that natural intelligence, What is it? Why do we have 6 billion neurons in our brain? Why do we have, 37 trillion cells? What are those things for? And have we explored sufficiently what is human intelligence? So maybe we have a challenge within the AI to begin to explore those kinds of things. And the Caribbean has such a vast imagination. It comes from Simone, Algonquin, Taino, Arawak, Kalinago, African, American, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Chinese, Asian, you just name it. What's in our belly? It's a living vibration, says David Rod. What is this thing that we have that we can now parallel anyone else in the world?
Well, I want to take that what you call it. I like the idea of fractals and thinking about how there's a very famous theorist, Caribbean theorist, Antonio Benitez Rojo, who wrote a book called The Repeating Island. And I think about the repeating island and some of the things that we as Caribbean people keep repeating in our way that we present and think ourselves, face ourselves in the region and in our history, in our past. And the one thing that I remember from Benitez Rojo that he talks about is the text as a spectacle, right? This carnivalesque, this kind of life that we have in our writing, in our literary production, that is something of a unique kind of I don't know what to call it. It's like a zhuzh, it's a feeling, it's a vibe, it's whatever it is, that human intelligence that comes from this shared historical and cultural experience that cannot necessarily be replicated in formats outside of this space. And I like to come back also to, just to wrap up, because I want to say thanks to everyone. I too have to run, but I want to say thanks to everyone and to our audience that has been locked in. But to remember that as Caribbean people, we also like this. Yes, we want to be on AI. We miss the .com. We are in AI, and there's so many ways that everyone on this panel has said that they're using it that are really great opportunities. But let's not be afraid of it, but let's not be intimidated by it. It doesn't make our culture. If we only use it to make our culture, we use it for storytelling, but storytelling is us. We are the stories, our people, our past, the nuances of our everyday. That's the stories that are worth telling, right? And no one else can replicate that with the kind of emotional, psychological, natural, environmental registers that we can, right? We have to be able to use it in conjunction, like all the other technologies that we have had. I take Mr. Sekou's questions about, the opting in. We can do that, but I want to use this as a shameless plug to say my students and I have been working on a 4-year-long project called Visualizing Caribbean Literature, where we work with librarians and experts in the field to put obscure writers on a map.
Excellent.
We have a website and we are creating we are in the next with grant funding to create Wikipedia pages for people like you all, for Steinberg Henry, not Henry Steinberg, and for Sam George, Caribbean one. And in doing the research for this project since 2021, we've been working on this project at Create Caribbean. This happens a lot, that we get mixed up with European people who have bigger platforms. Whatever. Our people are not.
We need them. Those are the things we need.
Authors are on our list, but we have more authors that are not. Some of you are not on our list yet. So all of these, we're working on a big project. We'll be sharing stuff, but it does exist. It's live online. You can search for it, Visualizing Caribbean Literature, and it's a live work where we are restoring Caribbean writers and their stories and creating a living database. And I have to say, you know what's better than AI? Librarians.
Yes.
Yeah. I know we have to go, so I'll make this my last word, and then it's yours, your floor. Some years ago, I got a call from our local public library, and it was a woman, a librarian on the line, and she said, can I ask you 3 questions? And I don't remember all of the questions, but the last question she asked me was, do you think in the future libraries will still exist? That was about 20 years ago. And I said, of course, I believe libraries will still exist in the future. I say it may change how we look at libraries. I didn't know AI was going to become something so public, but I just had a feeling that we would see things change because, like everything in life, there's only one constant, and that is change.
Yeah.
So that was my answer. And now that I think about that survey, I said, my God, I
Yeah.
can't believe we are here. I didn't imagine how quickly things would change, but the libraries are still here and we still need them.
We still need them, and that's my point, is that all of the information that AI is can amass has a lot to do with metadata created by librarians. That's
Yeah.
how they can find the books.
True.
That's how they can get the stuff, the ISBNs and all of these things, the call numbers, all of the information curated by information seekers in libraries make it possible for AI to do the things that it's doing. It does not exist without that particular type of service or that particular type of skill set, and it will never replace the people who are producing the work and finding it. And
That is what I was going to say. Exactly.
it will never replace that. So we
Indeed.
should not be afraid or hesitant to engage it, but we should also not let it be like we should not live our life in, oh, will it replace me? No, it doesn't carry the legitimacy that we carry as a people or in our various professions. It's just a thing, like a car, like Steinberg was saying, right? So I want to thank all our panelists this evening. This was an amazing conversation. I'm so happy I said yes to this in my schedule, because I was nervous about the time, but I'm so grateful to all of you, including those Ameka and Dr. Simone Mathieu who had to step out. Thanks so much for a rich discussion. Thanks to our participants in the audience on YouTube and Facebook Live for your enthusiasm. It's so great to have you all here. I hope that you join all of the other events of this week and get to interact with all our writers and see the showcases, etc. So happy to have this event. And thanks to all the organizers again for putting this together. This is actually a dream come true that I didn't have to do any work on. I'm so happy. So
Thank you.
this
It's great.
is great.
Thank you, Dr. Esprit. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And
Thank
success
you,
to the festival to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.